Hello, everyone. I wanted to give everybody an update. Since I sent out the original rules interpretation video for all officials and coaches, we have received some clarification on specifically one of the rules. And the initial PowerPoint rules interpretation meeting that I sent out is not correct. So I wanted to correct that, and thought that the best way to do that was through a video so that I can show you the slides that we're talking about and the changes that are different from what the original interpretation said. So I'm going to share my screen here, and then we'll get going, and I'll talk about it with you. Okay, so so we talk about head, neck, cervical timeouts. All of the stuff that was prior to this, when you talk about bad time, it still stays the same. When you have bad time, your head, neck, cervical time is not erased, similar to blood time. But as we get into the head, neck, cervical time clarification, I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of one particular thing. Again, the only people that can request the head, neck, cervical timeout are the appropriate healthcare professionals that are on site for that competition. So we can't have people coming out of the stands asking for the additional time. If there's not an appropriate healthcare professional during that injury time for that wrestler, then you cannot request that additional time. And they have that minute and a half to determine whether they can continue to compete or they will be defaulted. So that being said, one of the initial interpretations were that the head, neck, cervical would constitute a timeout with regard to the injury timeout. And I think the best way to compare this to is like stalling on the penalty chart. It is its own thing now. It doesn't fall in the progression with the penalty chart when you're talking about consecutive penalties and the addition of points as you go through the match. With head, neck, cervical timeout, it's its own thing as well, which means if you have a match that has a wrestler that gets injured and it constitutes a head, neck, cervical timeout because the appropriate healthcare professional asks for it, that's the only time that you get for head, neck, cervical. But it will not count as an injury timeout when you talk about additional injuries or injuries that happen either before or after that with regard to choice. So if you have a wrestler that has an ankle injury in the first period and they use some injury time, and then later on in the match, they have another injury, you initially would start the injury time, but appropriate healthcare professional would ask for the additional time to check it out. That would constitute the head, neck, cervical timeout, and that's the only one that you get for the match. Any additional head, neck, cervical injuries during that match, and that would constitute a default because the evaluation time is irrelevant. So you get that time at that point to check them out for head, neck, cervical. Because it was an injury before, the time elapsed, say that was a minute 10, that minute and 10 would stay as a minute and 10. And then if you say the head, neck, cervical evaluation determines that they can continue, then that's the only one that you get for that. But that does not constitute a timeout that would be added to the injury timeout for the ankle in the first period. So if after that you have a shoulder injury later, or maybe even the same ankle later on in the match, that would actually be your second timeout. So head, neck, cervical is its own thing. It's its own timeout. It's not really considered an injury timeout. It's a head, neck, cervical timeout, although the wording says injury. We'll work on that, but I wanted to clarify that as we move into the season because I don't want any confusion. I'm going to send this out to all coaches, all head coaches and all officials that are registered with us so that they understand that this head, neck, cervical time is its own and it doesn't go in addition to any injury times. This is the wording. Again, I can't emphasize enough that the only people that can ask for this are the appropriate healthcare professionals that are on site for that contest. Now, I will say that if you have an athletic trainer traveling with your team, they are considered an appropriate healthcare professional, even if they are evaluating a competitor from a different team. They're there for that competition. They constituted they meet the criteria for appropriate healthcare professional. Now, I will say that you need to educate your table help, and you need to make sure that your athletic trainers are also aware of what they can and can't do. So this is the wording in here. The stuff that's marked out is the stuff that was deleted, and anything that's underlined was added to the rule book. The timeout signal is a closed fist to the forehead, as you see here. And again, this is something that you need to make sure that your table help is aware of for signals. So that's what I wanted to share with you. All the other slides were the same. We just wanted to make sure that the interpretation of not adding it as an additional timeout with regard to choice was very clear for everybody. It's its own timeout. Head, neck, cervical is its own timeout, and the only people that ever can request that are the appropriate healthcare professionals. So that's what I have for now. Any further updates that will come out, I'll send those to you as well. Thanks and have a great day.